I still remember the exact moment I realized my life was unfair. My sister Olivia's medical school debt? Gone. Paid off completely by our parents. And me? I was still staring down $200,000 in loans, wondering if I'd ever dig my way out. I froze when the hospital administrator stood up in the middle of her debt-free celebration dinner and called my name. Why me? Why now? And most importantly, what did this mean? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Olivia, 28, radiant in her cap and gown, was laughing as our parents, Susan and David, toasted to her well-deserved success. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, 26, clutching my invitation, my stomach twisting in a mix of pride for surviving med school and rage at the unfairness of it all. Our parents had always had favorites, but this felt like a punch straight to my gut. She deserved it more, my mom had said earlier, a casual line that had destroyed months of emotional labor I had poured into my studies. I had worked twice as hard, pulled double shifts, stayed up nights studying while Olivia, well, she had charm on her side. She never seemed to struggle the way I did, and somehow, that made her more worthy in their eyes. Can you imagine graduating with the same degree, the same honors, and still feeling invisible in your own family? As I sat there, trying to smile, I kept wondering if I had imagined it all. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a one-time celebration, right? But then I saw him. Dr. Reynolds, the hospital administrator, mid-40s, with that calm but sharp look of someone who notices everything. He scanned the room, paused, and then said my name. Just like that. Emma Carter. It echoed across the banquet hall. Heads turned. I could feel every eye on me, even my parents. My heart raced. What did he want? A reprimand? A lecture? A reminder that I wasn't as special as Olivia? I froze in my chair. My mind raced through every possible scenario, each one more terrifying than the last. And yet, there was a strange flicker of hope mixed with fear. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew it would change everything. Something big was about to happen, and I could feel it in my bones. Something that neither I, nor my sister, nor my parents had ever expected. And then he repeated it. Emma Carter. Only this time, there was a small smile on his face, one that hinted at a surprise. A twist. And that's when I realized this night, the night I thought belonged entirely to Olivia, might end up belonging to me instead. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It wasn't just the debt that hurt, it was how invisible I felt while Olivia basked in the spotlight. From the very beginning, our parents made it clear who their star child was. Olivia, 28, naturally charming and effortlessly confident, seemed to get everything handed to her. Me? Emma, 26, hardworking, persistent, scrappy, the one who quietly stayed up nights studying while juggling part-time jobs to pay for my own tuition. And yet, in our parents' eyes, my sacrifices barely registered. I remember one evening during our junior year of college. I had just returned from a 16-hour hospital shift, exhausted, hands shaking from too much coffee. I collapsed onto the couch, textbooks still clutched in my arms. Mom walked in, smiling, carrying Olivia's latest award from some volunteer event I barely even remembered her doing. She glanced at me, and without thinking said, "Olivia deserves this more." Just like that. No acknowledgement of my grades, my research, or the countless late nights I spent perfecting my skills. It was as if I was invisible. I'm sure some of you watching have felt this, like no matter how hard you work, someone else gets the recognition you deserve. Graduation day brought that same mix of pride and bitterness to a whole new level. Olivia walked across the stage, flawless, debt-free, my parents applauding her as if she'd cured cancer herself. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, clenching my fists, trying not to cry or explode in front of everyone. I had survived the exact same grueling med school program. I had faced the same sleepless nights, the same exams, the same terrifying clinical rotations. And yet, our parents acted as if my success didn't exist. And just when I thought I could fade into the background, just when I had resigned myself to being overlooked, the hospital administrator stood up. My name cut through the noise of the room like a knife. Emma Carter? My heart jumped into my throat. Why was he calling me? And why now, when everything had been about Olivia? The room fell silent, and all I could think was that this moment, this unexpected, inexplicable moment, might be the turning point I'd been waiting for my entire life. But what he said next would leave me speechless and force me to see my parents, my sister, and even myself in a completely new light. I didn't know what to expect when Dr. Reynolds, the hospital administrator, finally spoke my name. My stomach twisted with a mix of dread and anticipation. Was this a reprimand? A reminder that I was somehow less than my sister? I glanced at my parents, expecting smug faces or judgment, but their expressions were unreadable, anxious, confused, a little guilty maybe. And Olivia, she looked puzzled, too, her smile faltering. Emma Carter, he began, his voice steady but carrying weight. We have a small surprise for you. A small surprise? My mind raced. Was this a joke? Was he about to embarrass me in front of everyone? My pulse quickened as he motioned me forward. Every eye in the banquet hall followed my shaky steps, and I suddenly felt like I was on stage. But this was no graduation ceremony. It was something completely unknown, something that could change everything. He gestured toward a small envelope on the table. I hesitated for a moment, the world narrowing down to that one white rectangle. I opened it slowly, almost afraid to know what awaited me inside. And then I saw it, an acceptance letter for a prestigious residency program, fully funded, with a stipend that would cover my entire med school debt. I blinked, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Years of student loans, of financial stress, of quietly struggling while everyone else got a handout. It was all about to vanish. I felt my chest tighten. Relief. Shock. Vindication. And yet, even in that moment of triumph, I couldn't help but glance at my parents. Their faces were frozen in a mixture of pride and something else, jealousy, maybe guilt, maybe both. Olivia looked stunned, her earlier joy eclipsed by my sudden, unexpected recognition. And me? I was speechless, my mind swirling with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. But as I looked up at Dr. Reynolds, trying to find some clue, some explanation, he smiled in a way that made me realize there was more to this surprise than I could have imagined. Something that would force my parents to confront what they had overlooked for years, and it wasn't just about me finally getting what I deserved. And just like that, what started as Olivia's night had become mine. But what came next would push everything to a level I never expected. And it would leave my family questioning who they had really favored all along. As I held the envelope in my trembling hands, I realized I wasn't just being recognized, I was being elevated. Every late night, every skipped meal, every dollar I had borrowed to survive med school suddenly seemed worth it. And yet, the moment wasn't entirely mine. My parents, Susan and David, were staring at me as if they had just discovered a hidden truth about their own family. The shock on their faces was unmistakable. Pride, yes, but also confusion, disbelief, maybe even regret. For years, they had believed Olivia was the one who deserved the spotlight. And now, I was standing in it. Mom's voice broke the silence. We didn't expect this for you, Emma," she stammered. The words were awkward, heavy with unspoken tension. Dad just shook his head, half smile, half grimace, as though trying to process the reality that they had underestimated me all along. I had imagined so many versions of this moment, them finally acknowledging my hard work, apologizing for years of favoritism, maybe even making amends. But the truth was more complicated. There was no apology, no sudden embrace of recognition. Just the realization that I had done it anyway, and they had no choice but to watch. Olivia, for her part, seemed almost frozen. Her debt-free celebration, which had been the center of attention just minutes before, now felt overshadowed by my unexpected opportunity. She forced a smile, but I could see the surprise in her eyes, the flicker of uncertainty. The dynamic had shifted in a subtle, irrevocable way. For the first time, I wasn't the overlooked daughter. I was the one who commanded attention, the one who had just earned a victory that even my parents couldn't ignore. Even with this triumph, the night ended on a reflective note. I realized something profound. Recognition doesn't always come from the people you expect. Sometimes it comes from the outside, the people who notice your persistence, your grit, your resilience, long before your family does. And sometimes, being overlooked isn't a punishment, it's preparation. As I quietly celebrated my own hard-earned success, the banquet hall buzzing around me, I felt a strange mix of relief and bittersweet satisfaction. I had finally claimed my worth. But as I looked at my parents and sister, I couldn't shake the thought that this night, while transformative for me, had also planted seeds of tension that would take years to resolve. Something had shifted. Something had broken, and I had no idea how it would all play out. Standing there, holding the envelope that erased years of debt, I felt a wave of emotions I hadn't anticipated. Relief, disbelief, triumph, and yes, a little vindication. For so long, I had lived in the shadow of my sister, the golden child who charmed our parents effortlessly while I struggled quietly. I had wondered if my hard work would ever matter, if anyone would ever see the hours I spent cramming, volunteering, and working odd jobs to keep my head above water. And now, all of that invisible labor had finally been recognized in the most unexpected way possible. I looked around the banquet hall. Olivia was still glowing, her celebration now tinged with a quiet tension. My parents were awkwardly adjusting, unsure how to respond to this sudden shift. And Dr. Reynolds? He simply smiled, satisfied, knowing he had handed me not just an opportunity, but validation. It was a reminder that sometimes recognition doesn't come from those we expect. Sometimes it comes from someone who actually sees your effort, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the resilience that no one else noticed. And that realization hit me harder than the letter itself. I understood that my parents' favoritism, their overlooking of me, their insistence that Olivia deserved it more, it had stung, yes, but it had also prepared me. It had forced me to fight for myself, to push harder, to refuse to let someone else's approval dictate my worth. In a strange, ironic way, their neglect had set the stage for the victory I now held in my hands. I let myself savor the moment. No congratulations from my parents, no gushing from my sister, just me, fully present, finally acknowledged. I felt something shift inside, a quiet confidence, a sense of ownership over my own life and my own achievements. I realized that while some victories are public, the ones that matter most are the ones you fight for when no one is watching. As I reflect on that night, I know this. Life doesn't always reward you in the ways you expect. Sometimes, being overlooked is not a slight, it's an opportunity to rise in ways others can't imagine. And sometimes, the people who ignore you most are the ones who unknowingly shape you into the person strong enough to claim your place in the world. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this: don't wait for anyone else to validate your worth. Fight for it, even when it feels like no one is watching. Because when the moment finally comes, it's yours and no one can take it away. And as for my parents and my sister, that night changed everything. But what will happen next in our family, and how they will react in the months to come, that, I suppose, is a story for another time.